Thank you, everybody who was dancing with me. That was super fun. Did everybody have a good time? Are you all ready? Yes, I see some applause. That's great. This is how we applaud in ASL. Excellent. Great. I'm so happy to see everyone. Great. Now, for those of you who are finishing up dancing, and you're all sweaty like me, go ahead and turn your cameras on if you want to share your beautiful faces. We are recording this session, and the replay is going to be available, so you can keep your camera off if you don't want to be seen. But if you want the world to see your lovely face, I sure want to see you. And there's a button in the upper right of Zoom that lets you toggle between speaker view and gallery view. And I'd like everybody to come into gallery view right now so that we can see all the people coming in from all around the world. We've got people from multiple continents and time zones. This is going to be a lot of fun today. I'm super excited. Did anybody dance with their cameras off? Drop a chat and say, yes, I'm a dancer. Let me know if you're one of the silent dancers from today. Whew. Okay, I'm hot. I got to open a window. Because dancing is exciting. Amy's a dancer. Shannon's a silent dancer. That's great. Cher's still going at it. That's awesome. Yes. Can't stop her dancing. Great. Well, I'm so glad that we're all here today. Everybody can hear me all right? Can I see some thumbs? Yeah, great. I see a lot of thumbs. Awesome. So for those of you who are on camera, I want to play a quick game with you. I want to do some high fives with the other people here in the group. So if you want to play this game, pull your camera on, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a high five to the side. Okay, so to your left and your right, you've got high fives. And I'm going to count to 3. And on 3, we're going to give high fives to people on only one side of you. Okay, so let's give that a try. 1, 2, 3. High five. Great. Okay, so some of us connected and some of us didn't. So now we're going to do another round. And if you successfully see a high five connect, you're going to keep your camera on. And if your high five doesn't connect, turn your camera off. Okay, I want to see how many people connect. We're going to do another high five to one of those sides in 3, 2, 1. Give me a high five. Boom. All right, so nobody high fived to me. I'm going to stop my video. If you missed a high five, turn your video off. All right, so now we're into the second round. We're going to do some more high fives. I'm going to count to 3 and high five to the side, and let me know if you connect. 1, 2, 3. Give a high five. Okay, great. Now keep your camera on if you connected and turn it off if you didn't. Excellent. This was a lightning round. Okay, so everybody who wants to turn their camera back on, turn your camera back on. That was a fun exercise. Melissa, did I learn that from you or did I learn that from Marley? That was Melissa. Yeah, Melissa Dinwiddie's here. She's one of my teachers, very talented facilitator. And there's a lot of great exercises that we're going to go through today. But before we do, I want to do one more exercise where everybody points to Melissa. Everybody see Melissa Dinwiddie in the grid? Point to the direction where she is from you. Look at that. Look at that. Everybody's pointing in a different direction. So what that tells me is Zoom is relative. Zoom is not the same for all of us. We're all coming into this differently, and we're all going to see things differently. And so let's keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, I've got some slides I want to share with you today. I want to practice some more interactive exercises. And then we're going to use some of Zoom's special features for polls and for breakout rooms. But before we do that, I want to take a screenshot of all of you beautiful people. So everybody say cheese and smile. Cheese. Great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Oh, that's a keeper. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen and show you a few slides, because I happen to like slides. I know slides get a bad rap, but I find them to be a really good way to convey a lot of information quickly. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through a whole lot of information because this is going to be dense. We're going to talk about icebreaker exercises and why they're important to your Zoom meetings. We'll discuss the difference between meetings and webinars. I'll give you some best practices for facilitating virtual meetings. We'll talk about agendas and how to set clear expectations. I'll give you some tools for checking in and active listening, and I'll give you some practical techniques for keeping people engaged. At the end, I'm also going to give you a Zoom host checklist. Now, this is a 9-page PDF that has a lot of the tools that I use in facilitating virtual experiences. And if you're watching this on the replay, there's probably a button somewhere nearby where you can get it. But for those of you live, at the end, I'm going to give you a special treat just for people who are watching this live when I give you the Zoom host checklist. Now, when we started today, we had an opening that was meant to grab you, to honor you, to make you feel welcome and grateful to be here. And this is what we want to do in crafting a virtual experience. This quote's by Priya Parker, the author of The Art of Gathering. And she looks at meetings in a really holistic way. And the opening, she says, is a kind of pleasant shock therapy. It takes you out of the world that you were in recently and into this new world, this micro world that we're creating just for this moment, just for this meeting. And an icebreaker is a great way to do that. What an icebreaker does is it allows others to move. The ship in front in this photo, that's an icebreaker tugboat. And the purpose of this icebreaker is to move things about so that others can move through this environment. And that's your responsibility as a leader, to break through the ice so that others can feel comfortable and confident in moving. You've probably seen some of these opening exercises in other Zoom meetings you've been on. Really common ones are, hey, can you hear me? Let me see some thumbs. Can you give me a thumbs up? For those of you who know how to do reactions, give me a reaction thumb up. Yes, Lisa's got it. Dan's got it. Yeah. Why do you think people do this in the beginning of a Zoom meeting? It's to set the momentum, to get people participating. Other things that people talk about in the beginning is this is how we're going to use mute. We're going to be recording. I'll send you a recording later. You can train people on how to use chat, the difference between the gallery and the speaker view. Sometimes you want to instruct people on how to pin a video, depending on if you have a meeting or a webinar. What's the difference between a meeting and a webinar? Type something in chat. Let me know one specific difference between what Zoom calls a meeting and what Zoom calls a webinar. Connection. Interesting, Patrick. That's a really good one. Stephanie says that on webinar, only the speaker has video. That's correct. And so you could tell by this meeting today that we're having a meeting and not a webinar. In a meeting, everyone can talk freely. Good point, Alicia. They're much more interactive, is what Hannah says. Oh, and Dan's got a good point. A webinar is over 1,000 people. You could bring a lot of people into a webinar because they're just taking a single downstream video feed. You're not weaving together a whole lot of meeting feeds. Yeah, there's some great answers here in the chat. The video option, you can only see the presenter. That's really the biggest thing. Is in a webinar, it's only you talking. Everybody else is passively listening. Whereas in a meeting, we can create a different kind of engagement. And what I want to talk today is more about the meeting style of Zoom. And we can call these webinars, and people often refer to a meeting as a webinar just because it's become our parlance. It's how we describe the virtual interaction. Is we'll call it a webinar even though it's all of us on camera. But either way, what you're really doing is you're facilitating an experience. And facilitation comes from the Latin word, facilis, which means easy to do, easy or doable. So when you're facilitating, consider, what are you making easy for people? What are you enabling them to do? And if you don't know the answer to that, you don't really know why you're meeting. But if you can figure this out, you can create a wonderful virtual experience. Hosting a virtual meeting or a virtual webinar, people who do this, I typically see the same 4 problems. The first problem is learning new tech. And it's not just you that needs to learn it, it's everybody else on the meeting. You have to spend the first few minutes educating people on how to use the tool. The second problem is that people are disconnected. We used to be able to teach a workshop face-to-face and get a group of people in the same room. And there's a shared connection that happens when you share space and you share breath. We don't have that. We're all at home. We're all on our own computers. We don't have the connection that comes with being in the same physical space. The third problem I see is distracted participants. Right now, I'm competing with all of the internet for your attention. Any one of you can go onto Facebook and scroll through your feed. You can go and check your email. There's lots of other things you can do. And I had some questions before this workshop. People were saying, what do I do to keep people paying attention and let them know that they shouldn't be doing other things? And personally, I'm of the opinion that if I can't hold your attention and I can't successfully compete against the rest of the internet, it might not be worth it to have this meeting. If I'm not good enough at keeping and controlling your attention, then go surf something else. If you want to check email during this presentation, feel free. That's my view. For others, they have a set list of instructions that they give at the beginning. And you've probably seen these on webinars and meetings before. Close down other applications, don't check email, go to full screen. And these are all worthwhile instructions, but I see this as a challenge. How can I be so compelling that you can't look away? The fourth problem I see is this anxiety that people are ignoring us. We put all this effort and all this creativity into hosting a meeting, and then we show up and everybody's scrolling Facebook in the background. So these are the 4 problems that I see with virtual facilitation. And what I'd like you to do is to type a number into chat and let me know which one of these is a problem that you currently struggle with. Are you struggling with learning the tech? Type a number 1. If you're struggling with the disconnection of people, type a 2. If you're struggling with the distraction of participants, type a 3. And if you have anxiety around being ignored, type a 4. That's what Rebecca's got. And Alicia, anxiety and fear around being ignored. Stephanie's facing 2 and 3. I see a lot of 1s. Lots of people struggling with the tech. Yeah, that's a big problem nowadays. Hannah's a champion, faces none of these issues. Good for you. Same with Naga. Good for you. That's great. Cher's facing 1 and 4. Oh, but there's others. I'm so curious, Hannah. Let us know in the chat. What are other problems that you face in hosting good Zoom meetings? All these problems can be overcome by becoming a better Zoom host. If you become better at your craft, then you can keep everybody else's attention and you can fulfill the purpose of the meeting. Oh, that's a really good one, Shannon. Meeting the needs of participants without physical cues. That's tough. That's really tough. We're gonna talk about some solutions to that in a little bit when we talk about how to hand over attention to others virtually, because it's very different than how we do it in person. When you're hosting a virtual meeting, you're really dealing with the overlap of these 3 areas. There's the tech, there's the agenda, and there's the conversation. And it's in these overlaps that we can fulfill the purpose of the meeting. The delivery happens in the overlap between the tech and the agenda. How well I perform in this workshop today is how well I can move the agenda through the tech. But the engagement happens in the overlap between the tech and the conversation. These conversations we're having in chat, the conversations we're going to have in the breakout rooms later, that's where you get engaged. And if you want to keep people's attention, engagement is the way to do it. But the purpose of the meeting, the reason why we all meet, that's in the overlap between the agenda and the conversation. That's where progress is made. That's where you achieve your outcomes. That's where learning happens. And you can do this in a virtual environment. This is a screenshot from a meeting I was in a couple of weeks ago, and we were all on different continents and different time zones, different places in the world, and we had such a great time. We were really connected. We all got to contribute and participate. And that can happen online. It's different than when it happens in person. And working with this group of people was something that I did a lot of in person. 20 years ago, we were in a small physical theater school in Northern California called Del Arte. And we were in an ensemble training program. And we went to this tiny little school in the Redwood Forest. And we had an intense year-long program to study ensemble theater. The theatrical experience where one person is not the star of the show. It is the group of people that's the star of the show. What do we as a group contribute? And how can we as a group maintain the attention of an audience? And I learned some fascinating things while going to that school. When you're in a group in person and you're sharing space, there's a connection around the unknown. Because in a live theatrical performance, if somebody forgets their line, or if somebody stumbles and trips, the audience feels it. The performers feel it. Everybody's engaged at the same time, wondering what's going to happen. And we can't really do that online. If I happen to mess something up and disappear, it might be amusing, but it doesn't have that same sense of danger that you have when you're sharing space with one another. There's another thing that's different. When you're virtual, you have to be your own stage manager. And a stage manager, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, is someone who works on a theatrical production on making sure that everything runs smoothly. They make sure that the relationship between the performers and the audience is as clear and frictionless as possible. Stage managers dress in black because you're not supposed to see them. They work behind the scenes. They take care of all the little details that could potentially distract the performer. And when you're hosting a virtual meeting, you have to be your own stage manager. I had to spend all this time getting my machine rebooted and my music lined up, and I've got 2 phones on the side, one for my slides and one for the chat, and I had to do all this stuff so that you don't have to see it. And I can simply facilitate an engaging experience. So being your own stage manager is one of the unique challenges that you face in hosting a virtual meeting. And this challenge is made a lot easier with an agenda. An agenda for the meeting acts like the scaffolding around a building. And it creates the container of what people can expect during this experience. The clearer that you can set your expectations, the more comfortable everyone will be in participating with you. And when you have clear expectations so that people feel familiar with their environment, and you apply a little bit of pressure, that's where learning happens. Learning happens when there's high pressure and high familiarity. If there's low pressure, people will be comfortable, but they won't really get a whole lot of things done because there's no pressure to. If there's low pressure and low familiarity, people don't care. They don't want to engage. There's no incentive to. If there's low familiarity and high pressure, that's where people feel anxious. And it's really hard to make progress in a meeting when people are fearful or anxious. But learning happens if you can apply high pressure to an environment of high familiarity. And creating that scaffolding so that people know what to expect, that's how you can improve performance with clear expectations. Cornell University did a study and they found that less than 37% of meetings have agendas. And this is surprising when you look at the average cost for a meeting in salary. If you add up the salary of everybody who's attending a meeting, they average out to $338. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend a few $100 to kick some ideas around and figure out what we're talking about. I want to hit the ground running. By sending an agenda, you can validate the investment of time that people are bringing to you. Some basic best practices for scheduling a virtual meeting. If you are the one that's sending the calendar invitation, write an agenda in the description of the invitation. Just put in a couple quick bullet points. We're going to talk about this and this and this. It's a courtesy to everyone you're inviting that you're sharing with them the container of the meeting so they know what they're walking into. They're more familiar with the environment you're providing for them. Before a meeting, write out a list of questions you could ask so that when the facilitator, if it's not you, says, does anybody have any questions? You have something to contribute. You don't have to think of it off the cuff because you've done your thinking in advance. And what I like to do is after every meeting, if I've taken notes, I just do a digest of those notes in email. And if I'm recording it, I send out recordings afterwards. And these are the best practices that I use in scheduling and running virtual meetings. Doodle did a study and they found that poorly organized meetings cost US companies $399 billion a year. It's a massive inefficiency to run bad meetings. McKinsey did a study, or I'm sorry, Harvard Business Review did a study, and they found that 90% of people admit to daydreaming in meetings. How many people have done that? Can I see a show of hands? Yeah, daydreaming is an easy way to get through a boring meeting, right? 73% of people admit to doing other work. How many people have done that? Show of hands. Yeah. How many are doing that right now? I can't see your hands because you're working on other stuff. That makes sense. Your participants are going to have a specific level of engagement. The base level is that they're listening. At least they're hearing you, but that's the base level. That's the bare minimum, is just a passive engagement. The reason why we do interactive icebreakers is to move them up a step on this ladder. So they're reacting to what you provide. They're responding to you. There's some participation happening. If your participants aren't reactive, there's a good chance they're distracted. They're ignoring you because they're doing other things. But even worse, they could be destructive. In some meetings, you could have people actively sabotaging you behind the scenes, sending private chats to others, talking bad about you on Twitter. It does happen, but just like there's a worst case scenario, there's also a best case scenario. If you provide a good enough environment, your participants can become proactive. They can actively contribute to the meeting. When you say, what do we think about this, gang? The proactive members are the ones who take that initiative and they contribute ideas and perspectives that enrich the meeting for everyone. When you're hosting a meeting, insist that people engage with you. Some easy ways to do it is to check in. Every time I've been asking for your thumbs, show of hands, that's an easy way to check in with people. asking people to share, asking for responses to open-ended questions, it makes people feel like they're safe to contribute when they're encouraged to contribute. But one of the best things you can do is this concept called active listening. And there's this great model by Oscar Trimboli, and he defines the 5 levels of active listening. And the first level is listening to yourself. Even if someone else is talking, you want to know what your perspective is, what your biases are, so that you understand how this material is coming to you and through you. Beyond that is the content of what's being said, and then the context in which it's being said. And you can hear somebody's content, but misinterpret their context. And that prevents real connection from happening. You can also listen for what's unsaid, what people don't verbalize. And then finally, you can listen for the meaning behind the words. And by understanding these 5 levels of active listening, you can demonstrate to people that what they have to say is important and encourage deeper interaction. So here's some questions you can use to practice active listening. So if I understand you then, and then repeat back what you heard, because your interpretation of it might be different than what they said. You can ask people, what do you mean by that? And get them to dig deeper. One of the best statements that I use is, say more about that. When someone comes to an end of a passage and they've articulated an idea, and I think there's something more, I'll just offer that. Say more about that. And it gives the other person a chance to uncover those deeper levels of their meaning, what was unsaid before. All you have to do as the host of the conversation or of the meeting is to provide the opportunity for people to go to those deeper levels. As the leader of the meeting, the energy is really up to you. You set the momentum of the entire meeting. You lead the energy. And that energy then moves everyone else. It's why I start my meetings with a dance party. It gets us up, it gets us moving, it gets us feeling revitalized. As a matter of fact, I want everybody to do a quick exercise right now. Just shake your hands. You see those hands? Just shake them out. Shake them out. And shake them to the side. Way to the side. Great. And now slap your thighs. And then bang on your sternum with your fists. Great. Everybody feel a little more revitalized, a little more energetic? It's because I've led the energy of the meeting and of everyone in the meeting. Knowing how to do this effectively, it's like the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. A thermometer measures the temperature in the room, but a thermostat sets the temperature in the room. If you're leading like a thermometer, you might be able to accurately interpret and sense what's happening in the meeting. But as a leader of a meeting, you really need to be the thermostat so that you decide the temperature that you want the meeting at. And then you create that temperature and invite everyone to come along with you. One of the best invitations you can do is at the end of the meeting, end on purpose. A lot of meetings fizzle out at the end and they say, well, I guess we're done. And what are we doing that? But if you can clearly articulate the end of the meeting. So Elaine, what are your next steps after this meeting? Dan, what have you learned here today? I'm going to ask you these questions at the end. You don't need to answer them now. But what it does is it facilitates the conversation that wraps up the meeting. My favorite ending is there anything else we need to discuss? If you've been on a meeting with me before, you've probably heard me say this. I like to, when we're wrapping up a meeting and we're at the end, I like to open the floor with this question. And I often say, we covered a lot of great ground today. I'm really excited with where we're going. Is there anything else we need to discuss while we're all here? And because I've practiced this ending. And I've used it so frequently. It means that when we're at the end of a meeting and I'm taking lots of notes and I've got a lot of ideas, I can move through that disorientation and grab that practiced statement that helps us end the meeting on purpose. And these work, by the way, whether or not you're the leader of the meeting. As a participant in the meeting, as a proactive participant in the meeting, you can take these steps to contribute to better Zoom meetings. Okay, so I want to go over the agenda real quick before we move into the exercises. We talked about icebreaker exercises, the difference between meetings and webinars. We went over some best practices for virtual facilitation. We talked about agendas and setting expectations. I gave you some questions for checking in and for active listening. And we've got some exercises for keeping people engaged in the Zoom host checklist. And I'm going to give you this checklist in chat in just a minute. But before I do, I want to tell you about a program that I'm launching. It's called the Zoom Host Intensive, and it's 4 weeks in June. And this is not pre-recorded material. These are live, interactive, 90-minute training sessions where we work together collaboratively on making you a virtual certified facilitator. And this certification is worth 1 continuing education credit, and the cost of the program is $600. However, because those of you who are watching this live, I'm going to give you a special deal, and there's a coupon code to join this program. If you use this coupon code Masterclass at zoomhostintensive.com, I'll give you half off the program. But this is only for the first 20 people who join. I'm capping the registration at 40 people because I want to have a small enough group that we can all get individual attention. So if you're watching this on the replay or you're not one of the first 20 people, $600 is still a really good deal for this amount of training. I wanted to make it affordable because I know that a lot of people are going through a lot of transition right now. And I wanted to incentivize those of you who showed up live by giving you a steep discount. For people who complete this program, in addition to the continuing education credit, I'm also going to give you a digital badge. And this digital badge, the virtual certified facilitator, is recognized by LinkedIn and by the Open Badges protocol. And I'll actually give a badge to everybody who attends this masterclass. These badges are cool because you can't just copy the image. There's information embedded in the metadata that says this was awarded to you by me, and anybody can see that metadata. So if somebody copies that image off your website and pastes it on their own, anybody could look at that digital badge and say, that's not yours. That's not an authentic certification. The certification is in the image itself. It's really cool technology. And if you want one of these digital badges, just go ahead and drop your email address in the chat box, and I'll send you one as soon as we're done with this workshop. Now I'm just going to take 2 more minutes and tell you about the program, and then we're going to get into the exercises. Every week, we're going to focus on a different type of exercise. We're going to talk about icebreakers one week. We're going to discuss using the whiteboard, and I'll give you some advanced whiteboarding techniques. We'll do more in-depth breakout rooms than we're doing today, and we'll do exercises that keep people engaged. Every week, we're going to talk about different questions you can use in order to create better engagement with your participants. And we'll practice those questions in role plays, so that by the time you're doing live meetings, you're already feeling confident and competent with using these questions. We're also going to dive deep on the tech. I'll share with you how to use the calendar function so that you can invite people to a meeting that has the link and the password available with 1 click. We'll talk about the different ways to share screens on your machine and on external devices, and how to stream to YouTube and Facebook. I've been doing a lot of this kind of work lately because there are people who deliver face-to-face workshops that suddenly found themselves remote. And once word got out that I know how to transition those workshops from face-to-face to virtual, I was flooded with work. So it's been a very busy month for me. Everybody who's had a relaxing month because of the pandemic and you're not that busy, I'm kind of jealous of you because I've been swamped. But I've been able to do a lot of really great work that has helped me uncover the things that people really need when they're taking a live event and they're moving it online. And so I've collected all of the exercises and best practices that I've learned from people like Melissa Dinwiddie and from Marley Williams and from Amy Clymer and all of the virtual facilitators that I study, and applying my knowledge as a digital marketer, as somebody who's got expertise in the tech, as somebody who is a performer that knows how to keep an audience's attention. And I've used all of this to create this program. It's really good for teachers leading a class, for coaches who have a group coaching program, for speakers presenting to a remote audience, but most importantly for managers. That's really who I designed this for, is for managers who are used to having an office where they can create the container for their culture. And now they need to create a remote culture. And I really feel that Zoom is the best way to do that. We'll talk about how to optimize your connection speed so that people will be able to see and hear you clearly. We'll go over the differences between different ways you can share your screens and when to use each one. And we'll use a lot of breakout rooms. And we'll role play in those breakout rooms, a lot of the questions that we discuss. And we're gonna do polls. Now, I'd like to launch a poll right now because I wanna know how many people here have done a poll before. So I've got to come out of full screen and I'm going to launch this poll. And let me know, have you ever done a poll before? If this is your first poll, then select no, this is my first one, which means you have done a poll after this. And if you've done a poll before, say, yes, I have. Can everybody see the poll? Let me see some thumbs. You see that poll up in front of you? Great, great. All right, I'm going to stop sharing so I can come over into gallery view here. How many of you have done a poll before? And this is interesting. Because I'm the host, I can see that nobody has voted yet. And we're at 1:10. So is it possible that I didn't keep your attention? Is everyone scrolling Facebook? Oh, you voted.
We voted.
Lots of people are saying you voted.
Voted.
Wow. I am not.
I voted.
Yep, voted.
Zoom has glitches. I love this. Okay, I'm going to end this poll and share the results.
I see the results.
You
I
see
the results. Yeah, I see 76 is I voted and 24 no, this is my first one.
Lena, you are a better host than me because I see 0%. Wow, that's crazy. Okay, well, let's try a different poll. I'm going to launch a poll. And this is a question about the tech. It's a pop quiz. How many questions can you ask in a poll? And if you scroll down, you can see additional questions that serve as a hint for how many questions you can ask in a poll.
Now it won't let me submit.
I can't submit, and I can see the same question 10 times, repeating one after another.
It is supposed to repeat 10 times after another.
Okay.
And I'm submitting to the poll on my phone, and the answers aren't coming in. Zoom has glitches. This is awesome.
You have to fill out each of the questions before I'll let you submit it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really going to throw off your results.
Right.
Yeah, because a lot of people won't answer all of them.
Right.
Well, that you can't
Yeah, so
submit
what
the
I've
poll without
learned
answering
from-
all of them.
What I've learned from polls is that they tend to work best when you ask one question at a time, because people don't see all the questions otherwise. Although this poll, Caelan, is a really good one, because it it forces people all the way to the end to answer it.
Yeah. Yeah, and by using this poll this way, and by running into these glitches, we're learning about the boundaries of what Zoom is capable of. And we've learned that one question works better than 10. We've learned that sometimes the tech doesn't work. And so creating that environment where we can discover these boundaries, that's one of the things I want to do with the Zoom Host Intensive. I'm going to share results. And so I'm curious, how many of you can see anything beyond 0? Yeah, you can? Great. All I see is zeros.
92%, number 10.
92%.
You have to go to each question, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yep.
Caelan, can I ask something with regards to the polls?
Sure.
I'm wondering, I never had a reason to use a poll before in any of my meetings. If I had a question, I would just directly ask the people who I'm in the meeting with. So what's the advantage using a poll instead? What would you say?
Great question. Polls give a little bit of kinesthetic activity. As you might know, there's 3 types of learners. There's video learners or visual learners. That's half of the population is visual learners. 40% of people are audio learners, and 10% of people are kinesthetic. And I'm a kinesthetic learner. And so I'm always on the lookout. How can we get some kinesthetic exercises in here? And polls allow people to do a little bit of clicking and give them some interesting interface that'll demand their attention and get them off of scrolling through their email. So that's an advantage. The disadvantage is, and there's many. First, it's glitchy, as we're seeing today. Second, it's a pain in the neck to get the questions in. I can't add questions to a poll while we're here in the meeting. If I try to do it, it'll send me over to Zoom's website where I have to edit this meeting and add the poll questions there. And so there's some technological hurdles. I think what you're doing, Hannah, with just asking questions and chat responses or verbal responses is totally sufficient.
Okay.
If you want to tabulate responses,
Thank you.
I'd recommend something like SurveyMonkey so that you can keep the responses externally and not have to go and dig into the meeting settings in order to get the responses.
Can I add something, Caelan?
Please.
There's something to be said for variety. And so polls just add, another different way to engage with your students or your meeting participants. So, at one point, if you want to ask them, for their responses to a question, you might ask them to respond in the chat. At another point, you might ask them to wave their hands around or say, how much did you like this activity? Put your hand here or put your hand here, depending on how much you liked it or didn't like it, or put your face close to your camera or far away from your camera, depending on how much you liked or didn't like an activity, or whatever it is that you're trying to assess, right? And at another point, you might have a poll question queued up and ready to go, or like in my recent workshop that I know you were in last week, Hannah, I had poll questions to gauge how confident they were about leading engaging virtual meetings that I asked at the beginning, at the end, so that I could have a visual to assess how confident are people before the workshop and after the workshop. And also it gives a little bit of variety. And as I said, it's a visual that people, gets people to engage in a different way, and it provides a visual in a different kind of visual rather than seeing people's faces on a screen or seeing their hands interacting with the camera or typing in the chat. Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Great
You
point.
get a little bit of qualitative data as well.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the questions that you ask,
Yes.
you can get qualitative data that, will help you.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. Yeah. Dan, I saw that you had your hand raised.
Building on Melissa's point, we're doing a meeting tomorrow with over 100 field salesmen. And it's the thermostat versus the thermometer. Some of the polling can be a thermometer. So just by saying how many people have been comfortable on Zoom meetings gives you, the host, a sense of how challenging that group of people will be. So depending on how the scale or the size of your meetings, those kinds of polling can give you a really good pulse on what you're up against.
Brilliant. I didn't even think about that. Polls are a good thermometer. Great point, Dan. So Pat has a question about having a producer or a stage manager behind the scenes to run poll activities. And I think that's very smart. If you have someone on your team who can be the admin that will handle all of the, especially to handle the tech support with participants who are trying to log on, often the first 5 or 10 minutes of a Zoom meeting with a new group is spent trying to get people to have their camera work, have their microphone work. A lot of people on tablets and on phones have a different Zoom experience. And so having an admin, a stage manager who can handle those interactions in private chat is very helpful. What I'd recommend you do, Pat, is at the beginning of the meeting, introduce that person and say, hey, everyone, this is Pat. Pat's going to be helping me run this meeting today. He'll be launching the polls. And if you have any issues with Zoom, go ahead and send Pat a private chat message. Does everybody know how to do a private chat message? And then you direct people to the Zoom chat button that's blue that says everyone and share with them how to change that. It takes 30 seconds in the beginning of the meeting and it can make it a lot smoother throughout the rest of it.
I've also seen or been in meetings where the person who's the stage manager actually does the introductions and that sort of thing so that, you know, the facilitator doesn't have to worry about that. You come in, set up everything. I'm your stage manager, direct your questions to me, whatever it is, and then you turn it over to the facilitator for the main gig.
Great point. Then they're acting more like an MC as well.
Yeah, I just did that for an internal training call. And I think it helped because if there were technical glitches, I could break in and let the presenter know I wasn't some weird voice that hadn't been heard before. But like the presenter wasn't sharing their screen. So I said, hey, can you share your screen? And it was a little more natural than just, you know, voice of God appearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's something that helps in virtual meetings too. If you're open about the tech and about the arrangements. This person's going to be helping me. Hey, can you share the screen and go to that slide? It actually gives people a level of comfort to see those behind the scenes mechanics, because then they understand the arena of the meeting in a clearer way. So has anybody here done a breakout room before? Let me see a show of hands. Who's done a breakout room? Great. Who has not done a breakout room? All right. Well, what we're going to do next is we're going to try breakout rooms. And what I'd like everybody to discuss is what was the most surprising thing you learned today? I'm going to type this in chat. What was the most surprising thing you learned today? And the reason I'm putting this in chat is because you might notice when you go into the breakout room that you have an initial moment of disorientation. And any instructions I give you verbally might go out the window because you're seeing who else is coming on the camera and what else is happening. And so you can refer back to chat to see what are we supposed to talk about. I'm also going to send you a broadcast message with the same instruction after you arrive. And this is something you can do as the host, is send a broadcast message to everyone in the breakout rooms, but it only stays a little bit of time. And so I find that this protocol for breakout rooms, put the instructions in the chat and send it again with the breakout message, it provides that scaffolding so that people know what to expect. Okay, so now I'm going to split us up into 8 breakout rooms. And you should see an invitation to go and join those rooms. I'll leave them open for 5 minutes, and then bring us back. If you're watching this on the replay, this is a neat tip. The recording follows the host. So I can have a dance party. Nobody in the breakout rooms know. Sammy or Eric, and if you're multitasking, you might hear my music. So I want to make this instructional for people on the replay, so you don't have to skip ahead. As the host, I have the ability to go and join any of those breakout rooms. And I can hop from room to room. Others can't. It's a special ability that I have as the host. If I go and I join one of those breakout rooms, the recording follows me. Thanks, Sammy. Good seeing you. So if I hop from room to room, the recording is going to follow me where I go. But the conversations that happen in the breakout room are not recorded, either by the screen share or by the chat. An interesting thing happens with chat. People go into breakout rooms and they can chat there. And when they come back to the main session, their chat remains, but nobody else sees it. As a matter of fact, if I put in a chat right now, nobody sees this. Well, Rebecca and Eric can see it because they're still here. Ah, Rebecca's gone. Ha ha. Did she leave the meeting or go into a breakout room? Aha, see, this is how we force participation. So that chat message I just sent is seen by nobody. Oh, I have to do the broadcast message. What was the most surprising thing you learned today? Boom, goes to everybody. You know, if you're still watching this on the replay, I really need to just get the dance going. You know what? I'll do this. Before I close the breakout rooms, I'll give you a special thing, people watching on the replay. Oh, I can't do that. It'll unplug my mic. Ah. Screw it. I'll do it. This is what New Zealand looks like. You get to see that. Nobody else gets to see that. None of the live participants see that. It's just you. All right, let's get my mic working. Yes. Microphone works. I'm going to close those rooms. Welcome back. So how did that go?
Always great, great.
Yeah?
People don't want to come back. See, Caelan, they don't want to come back. They're just
I know. I know. It's either because it's so fun or, well, no, it can't be because I smell bad. Nobody can smell me from over there.
Are you still performing, Caelan?
Oh, no. I've been working from home for so long. I got out of performance when I started having kids.
So is that a control thing that you can set up, Caelan, like from an admin perspective of like dividing people up into groups? Is that the functionality?
Yeah, there's, I'll tell you what, I just want to be conscious of time. We're almost at the top of the hour. I'm going to stick around for a little while afterwards to answer more in-depth questions. And I'll share with you a video, Lana, that's 3 minutes long that goes through the specifics of how to put people in different breakout rooms and what your capabilities are. It's really neat functions. You can choose which people are going to go in which rooms, how many rooms there are, how many people per room. You can swap people in and out. And the coolest thing is you can join breakout rooms as a host. And you can hop from room to room.
Did you say that video was 30 minutes long or 3 minutes long?
3 minutes long.
Better. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll stick around for about 30 minutes if people have additional questions. But before we jump into those, what was your reaction to the breakout room? Did you have any insights? Yeah, good stuff. So I'd like to know, I'd like to offer to anybody to share something surprising that they learned today, that they didn't expect.
I didn't know they had that you could do breakout rooms.
Oh, really? Yeah, they're a new feature. They were just released recently.
I like the Venn diagram you had for the 3 components and the intersections of those, because I have a lot of people every 2 weeks to bring up to speed, and that really does help our organization standardize on things.
Yeah.
Very good.
I would like to share that what I learned today is ending on purpose. Wrapping up a virtual meeting has been something I have not considered, or I have not been aware that it could end in a more meaningful way, and I will pay more attention to that from now onwards.
That's great, Hannah.
I'd like to say that I'm new to Zoom, but what I learned today was around your interactive beginning and the icebreaker. It was great because I'm so used to doing things live and doing icebreakers live, but doing it on a virtual platform was quite fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing the connection you can create with people, even virtually, with Icebreaker.
It surprised me. It's so obvious now that we talk about it, but that the leader leads the energy of the meeting. That's going to help me tomorrow.
Great. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Excellent. Well, I have had so much fun talking with all of you today. I've been recording this session, and I'll send a recording around later. If you watch the recording, you'll see my dance party that I did while you guys were in the breakout room. And I gave some extra instructions on what happens with recording and chat when the breakout room happens, because some specific things happen with the host. And so if you want to watch the replay, that stuff is all in there. And I'll also, oh my gosh, I forgot to give you the Zoom host checklist. I can't believe that. Okay, I'm dropping a link in chat. And this checklist is hyperlinked for those of you who have Zoom 5. If you see black text and you have to copy it and paste it, you're still on Zoom 4, and it means you need to update to the latest version of Zoom. I'll also send a link to this around with the replay, so you've got the PDF. And a lot of the exercises in there they're not listed with description, so it might seem kind of vague, but if you join the Zoom Host Intensive, we'll be practicing all these exercises. Oh no, I put it in privately? I'm sorry about that. There we go. That's the link that you should see in chat. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Great. Excellent. Now I'm going to stick around for some Q&A. If anybody has any specific questions about their meetings, their situation, or anything that we've discussed today. But if anybody needs to leave, thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.
I had one
Thanks,
quick
Caelan.
question.
Thank you, Caelan.